Dear colleagues, good afternoon. Before we start the press conference of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russian Federation, I just want you to take note. We distributed materials on hate, aggressive speech of Kiev regime, fake news, neo-Nazism facts in Ukraine. So please take a serious look on these materials. And now I give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russian Federation, Mr. Lavrov.
Hello, colleagues. I'm very happy to see you all, including our old friends and acquaintances here. As per our tradition, we're finalizing the high-level week with a meeting with you and try to be very transparent and open and frank in our responses to the questions that you might have. I won't be making an initial statement, a lengthy one, a substantive welcome remark. I hope that as ladies and gentlemen of the media, you're following what's happening. I have just spoken at the General Assembly Hall, and there are the main outlines for the Russian foreign policy. My main conclusion at this stage of the General Assembly does confirm that the world is going through a deep transformation. As part of that transformation, there is a collision of two mainstream processes. One is an objective, historically driven process of shaping of the multipolar world that is firmly based on the principle of sovereign equality of states, which is enshrined in the UN Charter. And the second group of countries is represented by those who would like to maintain unipolarity to preserve what we're used to calling the golden billion, to preserve a neo-colonial, not a colonial, world order, trying to live at the expense of others. There are plenty of examples, and I'm sure that you, as journalists, take an interest in what's happening. You take an interest in the way the countries are trying to explain their positions and the way their words apply to their deeds. Are they the same or not? And I suggest we move on to questions, and Maria will be conducting the process.
To UN Correspondent Associations, please, Valeria Rebecca.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Foreign Minister, for the press conference on behalf of the United Nations Correspondent Association. It's Valeria Rebecca from ANSA Newswire. The EU says that we are already in a hybrid war with Russia, and according to NATO, Russia's repeated air violations constitute a military escalation that endangers human life, and Moscow bears full responsibility. What is your response to this accusation? Thank you so much.
I'll give you an example. When the drones fell on the Polish territory, right on that very day, as soon as Poland raised alarm, we suggested through the Ministry of Defense to conduct a meeting and to have a business-like discussions, like professionals do, without a hysteria, to deal with the situation, to look at the wreckage, to look at what kind of drones they are, what's their range. The drones that were allegedly found on the Polish territory, if these are the drones that we think they are, then the range is less than from the border of the Russian Federation to the Polish border. But I'd like to repeat once again, when someone is shying away from a frank conversation, from a proposal to have an honest conversation, they don't want to deal with that, then I guess it's a good thing that you've started with this question. A year ago, at this very hall, right at this very table, I was telling you the way we try to get to the truth regarding to the provocation that was conducted in April 2022 in Bucha. It was when the Russian units withdrawn from the Kiev suburbs, including the suburb of Kiev called Bucha. And we withdrew from that town because the Western countries were calling us to create a trustworthy atmosphere for the slated signing of a peace agreement on the settlement that Boris Johnson torpedoed back then. So when Russian units withdrew from that settlement of Bucha, 2 days later, it was a happenstance, so to speak. TV reporters from the BBC were broadcasting around the world corpses that were lying in perfect order along the major street of Bucha. So no one saw them for 2 days, and finally they saw them. It doesn't happen like that. So for these 3 years, I've been pledging with the UN Secretary General, and we've actually sent an official request to the UN Human Rights Office. And we've been asking for one thing. The initial investigation that we have called to do, and no one wanted to conduct this investigation, so we act to at least publish the names of those whose bodies were shown on the BBC broadcast. UN Secretary General, and I've spoken to him yesterday about that as well, he just shrugged his shoulders and said he won't deal with that. He doesn't want to deal with that. And later he said that he asked to do it, and he was told no. But we have also appealed to the UNHCR officially in written form a year ago. We've received an answer just this summer. And the response, well, amazes us. The possibility of revealing the data about the injured is being reviewed together with the legal office of the Secretariat. Later, we were told that the lawyers of the Secretariat said that it's not reasonable to present data on the victims of Bucha, to ensure the security and safety of their relatives. A year ago, when it was stalling just like today, I appealed to you. I appealed to your journalistic interest. Don't you have an interest in learning whose bodies were shown there? Who were they? None of you, as far as I understand, no one followed up on that. No one conducted a journalist investigation. Though such investigations happen even on smaller incidents. Going back to a question, we have nothing to hide. We never attack civilian infrastructure. Incidents happen, but we never conduct targeted fire against them. We never target with our UAVs or missiles on the countries in Europe, be that EU members or NATO countries. Once again, if Poles indeed wanted to get to the bottom of that situation, we've proposed a meeting, immediately proposed a meeting, but no one wants to discuss the facts, ever. There are plenty of examples when we're accused, and later it turned out that it was the Ukrainians who targeted the market and other infrastructure, hospitals and so on. Well, it all follows the same scenario. First, hype happens, and later journalists who first initiated this hype, they don't want to deal with that. But we're always open to a frank conversation. Good afternoon, Minister Lavrov. Yesterday, the UN Security Council, after the vote, declined the draft by Russia and China to extend the UNSC resolution 2231. What are the consequences of renewed sanctions against Iran that you see? Do you see that it is possible to solve through diplomatic means the Iranian nuclear issue? If so, what are the next steps? What is Russia prepared to take? The snapback mechanisms for sanctions is included in the UNSCR that endorsed the Iranian nuclear deal, as we call it, in 2015. It was enshrined there after the direct negotiations between the Iranian foreign minister and the United States State Secretary. John Kerry was the State Secretary back then. So this so-called snapback mechanism is not typical for any other sanction regimes. in essence, it allowed any country to put up for a vote, to put this resolution up for a vote, so that the sanctions alleviation regime will continue to be in place. And the country with a veto power, even unilaterally, could block such a resolution. That would mean that the extension of alleviation of sanctions won't happen. There are two notions here. First, this is not a very succinct wording here, but it's the main idea is to constantly keep the Iranian colleagues alert so they won't take any steps outside of this framework. The second notion is that Iran agreed to this exotic mechanism purely for the fact that it was sure that it would never violate this deal. Therefore, let them have this mechanism, let it be over their heads, but as something put on the back burner. But Iran is not going to violate it. Therefore, they agreed to it very easily. And the idea that the deal will not be broken by them, but the U.S. in 2017, or 18 or 19, I'm not sure. They couldn't even think about it. But it happened, and the U.S. have withdrawn from the deal. They said that they did not recognize this resolution. Europe, instead of demanding that the U.S. would go back to implementation of their obligations, also started to shy away from commitment to the agreement. And the number of violations is very well known. The resolution that the U.S. does not recognize. Now, the Europeans are cherry-picking what they want from that resolution. And what they want is this exotic mechanism for a snapback. It's very hard to explain in an understandable way. This is a trap. And that phrase, that para, was created as a trap for Iran. It's just yet another piece of proof that Iran does not intend to violate the NPT treaty, the commitment to the nuclear deal. Nevertheless, the next Iranian government has fallen into this trap, the trap that they have inherited from 2015. Together with the People's Republic of China, we've done everything to give diplomacy a chance. Even after the resolution about the snapback of sanctions was adopted, there was a chance to agree that for some time, we wanted a 3-month extension. We wanted to extend the Iranian nuclear deal in their entirety without adding anything or crossing anything out in all its aspects, so it would continue to be in place for the time when we hoped we could continue negotiations. Since West has torpedoed that and has blackmailed the majority of the UN Security Council members so they would support their destructive position, I don't know what Iran do, how they would respond. This is incapability to negotiate with anyone and not giving 2 or 3 months so that Iran would be able to negotiate and find possible conditions of working further with the IAEA, with the US as well. Iran is still prepared to have dialogue, maybe an indirect one, through mediators and with the so-called E3. Iran was also holding conversations with them. However, the outcome of those negotiations just proves that from the very beginning, the European trio was trying to find any pretext to bring back sanctions. So any bona fide proposals of our Iranian colleagues to find a compromise, they were all turned down. When something was announced that there is hope for an agreement, right the very next morning, it turned out there was none. This is a deliberate operation aimed at coming to the next level of choking the Islamic Republic of Iran in terms of economy and finance and so on. what you are writing from time to time, and political analysts are also mentioning that the threat of new strikes against Iran is still in place. And as some are reporting, the people who know something about that they're discussing in practical matters, it's very telling. It's all synchronized, the military threat and economic issues as well. It just means that the European countries have no qualms about violating resolutions, be that on Iran or Kosovo or Minsk agreements on Ukraine. There are plenty of examples of that.
Hi, Minister. Welcome back to New York. Shudoji with China Central Television. A couple of days ago, after meeting with President Zelensky, U.S. President Trump said that he believed Ukraine can take back all the territories and even went further. And you met with Mr. Marco Rubio, and it's, let's say, a constructive talk. With this kind of ever-changing policies from your U.S. colleagues, how is Russia planning to engage with the U.S., especially, particularly with the Trump administration on this issue? Thank you.
You can call it ever-changing. You can call it flexible policies. You see, every state, especially every leader, has its own style of dealing in the international arena and domestically as well. Indeed, we appreciate that the United States are aware of one most important thing, that in principle, it is not correct when states are refusing to even talk to each other, the way it was done by the Europeans and Biden during his administration.